Let's get started kind of in the origin story of where all of this evolved. And specifically, we're here to talk about your book. But I know someone's book is also an element of their story, their life, their experiences. And that's what you're a generator of, is generating experiences. So let's talk about the origin of where that came from.
The origin of the book, or the origin of how I even got into experiences?
I would say yes and, right? I think
Yes,
that's
and.
probably how it started, was experiences themselves that then caused you to write a book on it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny, what flashed into my brain was 8th grade, and I had to create a magazine for an English class project, and I remember working with my mom on that, and probably thinking after that, I'd never want to write a book. I'm definitely not a writer. I had fun putting it together. The world of experiences, I would say, really started kicking off soon after I graduated college. I studied economics in college, and I never would have predicted in high school or college that I'd be doing what I'm doing today. We have our 40th class reunion in a month, and I asked everybody, how likely would people have predicted that you're doing what you would have thought in high school? And for me, it's very unlikely. No one would have expected me doing this. I was not a writer. I was not someone who liked to be in public. I was good at saxophone. I didn't mind being on stage singing, but speaking, heaven forbid. I didn't want anything to do with that. And so, but it was after college, I was programming computers for Boeing military airplanes. They had a military division back then.
Cool.
And I remember going to this class called Total Quality Management. And if you've been around in business for a while, you remember that, and there's iterations of it today. And they taught us the process for brainstorming. And of course, I'd brainstormed before that, but I'd never been through that process to generate ideas. And before that, I would not have known that I'm an idea machine. But that was my first taste of it. And I said, I want to do that. I want to do what the guy up front's doing. I don't want to go back to my desk and program computers.
Yeah.
So I asked the guy, hey, what did it take? And he said, well, go become a pastor for 30 years, have a heart attack, and then have your cardiologist say, you can't go back to being a pastor. He said, then you can be me. Like, well, that doesn't sound like a really good career path. But I still went and started studying what he was doing and left that job within the year, and then started doing things. And 5 years later, I was doing what he was doing for Koch Industries, a large oil and gas company here in Kansas that you've probably heard of. And so it happened, and that's probably where I really started to understand what experiences were. Because after orientations and management trainings and different things that I was doing, people would come up and say, that was the best training I've ever been to.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, man, the bar is low.
I didn't really do a lot, but glad you're happy.
But after a number of people start saying that, it's like, okay, what am I doing?
Sure.
And I was taking bits and pieces of my experience at that point in my life, and I'd say I've been building on it ever since.
It's incredible.
So the book is kind of the culmination of, why does everyone say best conference ever, best training ever? They can't mean it, or maybe they do, or maybe there is something that I'm doing that others don't know about. So that's why I decided to write a book.
Well, when I was when I was reading the elements that you had passed over before we had an opportunity to chat, I was thinking about, my head was like actually just like shaking, like yes, not only from a receiving end of being the one in the audience, but also someone who loves to put on experiences myself. It's hard for me to even say conference rather than experience, because a conference to me is like someone is speaking at you, rather than experience is something you are also engaged with. And so that, even from that ideation strategy that you were being engaged with that person who was speaking, you realized that there was something more inside of you that was being amplified by that person. And so let's talk about like being in the receiving end of an experience type event versus putting it on, because we'll probably want to tap into both, considering the audience that's listening in.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, we're in the moment. So today I was talking to my doctor, and I gave him a copy of the book. And I said, Doctor, you're one of the few medical offices I've ever been to where I feel like you've created an experience, and I look forward to going. Most places I feel like I'm actually the enemy. Yeah. And there's things that they do. And I think great events do the same things. Yeah. So when I walk in there, I'm greeted warmly. And some of them know me by name. Yeah. Like they've gone to the trouble of figuring out who I am. And I'm like, I have no clue who you are. Yeah. I hate that feeling. I don't remember your name, but you know who I am. And I hope it's not because I'm that kind of patient. So they make you feel welcome. They've got a really great place for you to sit. They don't make you wait very long. There's constant movement, and they're not treating you like there's something ill about you, but they want to value you. And I think similar things happen at great events. When I walk in and people recognize me, I remember Liz Lathan. So Liz Lathan works with Hot, but she used to be with Dell and IBM. And so she creates events. And when she sees you, she gives you a hug.
Yeah.
She warmly greets you, and then she introduces you to someone like your long lost friend and treasures you. And I think that feeling of your family, you belong here. You don't have to feel like you're a stranger. Yeah, you don't know anyone else in the room. I may be the only person that you recognize, but we're going to change that. She does a great job. I remember feeling that at several events that she's run. So I think those kinds of feelings are really important to have, right?
Yeah, you're actually like sparking my own ideation when I'm hosting events, the power of connection. I've had a lot of people ask me even just recently, like, what would you say is your superpower? And my two that I've been saying most recently after a lot of like excavation on that, because I think a lot of people have a lot of things they're good at. Like you're probably really good at. We're going to talk about you're really good at playing the saxophone, which is one of my favorite instruments ever. And yet that doesn't necessarily mean that's the one thing that you would say in the forefront if somebody asked you what your superpower is. And so mine has been catalyzing and connecting. So I love to like push people off ledges. My community has told me this many, many times, but like so gently off the smaller the back, like ready, go. It's going to be fun on the way down. And then connecting. So when you were saying that about her, what a dynamic thing to do almost instantaneously upon greeting or meeting someone, rather than waiting or lingering on that. I love that.
Well, I think one of the most awkward moments at events when you arrive is like you do get checked in, you do have that initial experience, and then you're left to yourself, and you're like, I don't know what to do next. So when someone says, well, we're going to make sure to overcome that, we're going to take you from the check-in to your table, we're going to make sure that you get into some interesting conversations. So now all of a sudden they've taken that away, and you could have all kinds of different ways that you solve that problem. Like that's there's not one path toward that, but I think it's really important to understand not everyone's going to feel comfortable immediately turning and introducing themselves as soon as they walk in. At least half your audience is going to feel very awkward, and probably a lot higher percentage than that. And I think to your point, like about being a catalyst, because I'm also a catalyst, I don't take people to the edge of a cliff, but I love to stir things up.
Okay, you do that, I'll push them in.
But I think if you don't make people feel comfortable, they're going to run away before you have the chance to catalyze them.
Totally,
right?
Totally. I think there's a trust element, right? And that's a huge part of event building is are you curating trust even before they get in the room? And I think that there's a lot that can happen in the forefront, and it's a part of the marketing